Let us go in. Today we're talking about building a quality first mindset. And this is how we're going to go through it. This is like a short talk. I've been given around 30 minutes, so I'm gonna actually time myself as well so that I don't go overboard. Because it's important to me that Mr. Toby invites me back to come and speak again. So let me just set a timer and then see how far we can go with that. This is what is going to be our table of content. I have also shared my slides with the team at the Qace Academy. So I believe after this, they'll be sharing this with you as well. I mean, it comes freely. You can also get to meet me, ask questions at the end of this session. Okay, so let's go into the first slide. So I want you to just read this with me. Imagine a world where you receive a call from a friend. Let's say you're in uni. For most of you, you have some level of QA knowledge on this call. So imagine a friend of yours, very close friend, asks you to send them money, and you send them money, right? Let's say 30,000. And you're kind enough to borrow them that amount. But after about 30 minutes, the friend calls back and says, my guy, thank you so much. I asked for 30. You sent me another 30 after, meaning 60. And you're like, huh? No, I didn't send 60. I sent only 30. And consequently, you then begin to receive multiple debits to your account of that same 30,000 naira to your friend, right? Now, I'm not speaking about something that is far-fetched. This is actually something that has happened to somebody that I know. Because QA wasn't done well. And the reason why it is important to build quality into the mindset that you have as an engineer, as a PM, as a QA assurance engineer is so that silly bugs like this, and I mean, I call it silly, but it's actually really big and really technical because this is what makes a lot of customers queue at banks on Monday mornings because something is just wrong with their infrastructure. And I don't mean this for only banks. It could be a fintech firm. It could be anything, right? If you don't build with quality in mind, if you avoid tech debt, if you avoid doing the things that should be in place because you're rushing to release to production, a lot of rubbish will happen. And a lot of rubbish that will still come back to your table because at the end of the day, it's your duty to ensure that no bugs go to production, but also if they do come, that you fix them efficiently. Or when the engineers make some fixes, you're able to test them appropriately and always ensure releases at the time that is right. Okay. So, hi, my name is Adela. Apart from that really short preamble, there are a few things I'd like you to know about me. And there are many things that I don't want you to give me a comment on. I just want to be able to share and move on in this training. So I have about 7 years of product experience. I started to work in the year of the Lord 2017. I was privileged after my NYSC to get a job at a fintech firm called Global Accelerex. At the time, it was one of the top firms for POS businesses. So deploying POS devices, building the applications that work on POS devices, and even doing customizations. At the time when agency banking wasn't popular, we were doing it. So I've done quite a lot in the industry. Fintech, I moved on to insurtech with a firm called Cassava, ensuring that customers have access to insurance. We had a partnership with Kuda Bank, which ensured that for every customer who enrolled at Kuda, they would have some level of insurance with their account. Moved on to a firm called Sprint for remittances, essentially allowing customers in Nigeria, Ghana, to send money abroad, the UK, the US, and many more, and essentially exchange. And I also built something called like a gifting platform for people who didn't necessarily want to send money home, but wanted to be able to send something. So we integrated with a platform for gifting, and then customers were able to, from abroad, send gifts to their loved ones, to their families, to their friends. Right now, I work at Mcopa. It's a credit firm, and our vision or mission is to make progress, help everyday earners make progress every day. We sell Nokia and Samsung phones, and we help them to pay small, small until they complete the payment of the phone. And we now layer retention products on it. So retention products like loans, retention products like data bundles, retention products like health insurance. Okay. Mcopa is where I met the lovely, the wonderful Mr. Toby. Um, I have a proven track record of taking products from zero, essentially discovery stages. I just have an idea of something to build to fully launching it and making them profitable. I love Manu. I support them. I don't want to hear your thoughts or concerns about that. My preferred club. You can keep it to yourself. And then one thing that you clearly didn't ask for is the food that I like to eat. I really like bread. I can eat all the kinds of bread as many times as possible. Okay. That's a simple thing about me. It's important for me to sort of make the environment for this a bit balanced. It's not too serious. It is also serious. But if you'd like to get to know me, get to know more about my work, that's my LinkedIn profile. Feel free to search for me. This exact image on the slide is the exact image on my LinkedIn profile. So it won't be hard for you to find me. Okay. So let's get into it. There's something called an Agile manifesto. And what this Agile manifesto does, think of it as when you want to start the foundations for something. There are a group of people who come together to say, this is the baseline for what this thing is going to be. And then over the years, we continue to layer on it, right? So that's what the Agile manifesto is about. When the Agile mindset was going to start, there were a group of people who came together led by Kent Beck, who led essentially what we call the Agile mindset today, or Agile product management. And in that Agile manifesto, which I have linked, I don't want to spend too much time going through that, but keep it at top of mind and make sure you can Google it or read about it later. It comprises of 4 Agile values and 12 Agile principles. Now, for this topic specifically, where quality is concerned, what I have done is I've taken out one of those Agile values and 2 of those Agile principles that actually tie into quality. Now, all of the values and principles at the end of the day have to do with quality, but there are 2 specifically, well, one value and 2 principles that will help me in elaborating on this discussion where quality is concerned. Okay. Now, these are essentially what they are. The value is that we have working software over comprehensive documentation, right? So one of the things that engineers, PMs, QA, assurance engineers really proud themselves on is that we have a document that shows what this product is about. Now, as a PM, I would have something called a product brief, or depending on whatever it is you call it at your firm. It could be a product brief, it could be a product specification document, it could be a product description document, a PDD. All are one and the same. For engineers, they could have something called a software, I forget how you put it now, a technical specifications document, right? Which is essentially how they say this is how they're going to do the work. Most of them will have like a specifications diagram for how the APIs will call each other. This is how these events will do this, will flow from this. If the decision is yes, this will happen. If the decision is no, this will happen. And then this is how we get to the end, right? Again, with QA, you guys also have like a release plan document, or essentially aligning with the PMs and the engineers at the beginning to ensure that whatever it is that we have to build, this is our test plan around it before we release it. Now, it is not enough to have good documentation but bad software. There's no point in releasing software if it's not going to work. And the reason why we have software in the first place is because we're trying to solve a customer's problem, which is why it's called value, right? The reasons why customers try to use any product that you or a firm develops is because they have a problem. Your firm has said that they will meet the need by giving them value, and this is how they would do it. So it is important that the software that is built by the engineers, guided by the PMs, and tested by the QA engineers is working. You see that I've mentioned three people that are involved in that process, but ultimately, the person who guarantees the release of that software into production, the person that says is okay that I can release this is people like Mr. Toby and people like most of you all on this call. So it's very important that the software works, as in you test that as a customer, because that's what QA does. I am putting myself in the customer's shoes to make sure every process that we've aligned to make sure this product works should work. Okay. Now we go into two principles. Number one, satisfy the customer. Again, sometimes we have software that works but doesn't solve the problem. That doesn't make any sense. There are people who haven't done a good job of solving the actual problem customers have come to complain about. And it's a generic problem that could happen if you're not paying attention at the discovery stages with the customer. What do you do at discovery? I want to really ensure that I understand the problem that the customer is going through and I can build the requirements to solve it. At discovery stage, you're not really talking solution yet. You just want to make sure the problem that the customer has is being solved. Let's give an example. SpaceTac just released something called Zap, right? And Zap is supposed to allow uh, any customer to combine all their different bank accounts, as many bank accounts as possible, and to be able to send money anywhere in the world, right? Now, some people argued that, and instantly, that's the value proposition. A lot of people have argued that, isn't that the same thing as like OPay? Or like a money point or a pound pay. They've essentially moved away from your typical banking structure, and they've created an infrastructure for you to let us send money very efficiently. But Paystack is saying no, that we're doing more than just sending money efficiently. There's no other bank actually that can combine all your banks together to be able to do that. So maybe, and I haven't used this before, even though I have it downloaded on my phone, but maybe an idea that they have is you can sort of combine the balances in your bank accounts to be able to send money. Again, an idea. I don't say that, I don't mean that that's what they're actually planning to do, but there's literally no other bank today in Nigeria that solves that problem. Now, when you are able to articulate that problem specifically, then you can write down the requirements for that problem, right? And then it's that then helps you to build, okay, this is what is now going to be my product brief in terms of this is what we're going to solve for. This is out of scope for phase one or for the MVP and so on and so forth. Then when you built that, the QA engineer and the development engineers know, okay, this is the scope for what we're solving in phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four. These are the requirements in terms of the acceptance criteria. If you've never heard of what an acceptance criteria is, it's basically a set of rules that determine what user story should pass. Very simple. So for example, an acceptance criteria can be given that a customer logs into their account. When they are on the login page, they should be able to enter username and password, click the confirm button, and they should be able to get into the application. That's a simple acceptance criteria, okay? So again, the principle helps you to satisfy the customer really well. And at this stage, and I'll talk about this as we go on, at the stage where those acceptance criteria start to come in, the QA needs to be abreast of that knowledge such that when they are testing, you're testing against the acceptance criteria, right? If there's one acceptance criteria that you cannot see when you're testing, then there's a problem. It means that something has not been solved for. So you now ask the question, are we still doing this in phase one? Are we doing this in phase two? Blah, 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 right? Or why did we skip this? Was it a mistake in the development process and so on and so forth, okay? Before I go into the last principle, I want to make sure that everyone sort of understands where we are. Are you feeling me? Are you feeling us? I need to see comments in the chat. All right, all right. More comments, more comments. Fantastic. Thank you. All right, so the last principle here is pay continuous attention to technical excellence, right? And that means quality is non-negotiable. I'll talk about it as we move on. So with whichever release you do, it's almost like the quality should be sustained as you continue with your releases. There should never be a reason why it should drop beyond that point. Okay. Let's get into it a bit more. So what I've done is I took an image of what a typical product cycle is. And this is something that's available online. So if you Google this, you can see many, many things. But I've added text on the side for what I think is really necessary at each stage. Now, let me tell you a common mistake that QA engineers make. You wait until the testing stage of the product before you give your input. That's where you are lacking a quality mindset in agile development, right? It's not the power of a QA engineer is that you're involved from the beginning. And the way that you can spot that you are involved from the beginning is when you're asking the most important questions at every stage of the development. Now, let me give an example. There's something called a Three Amigos that we do at MCOPA, right? I don't know if this is a generic thing that happens, but again, you can Google it. MCOPA was the first place I even encountered it, to be honest, where it was like purely defined. But what a Three Amigos means is there's a user story that we want to work on, right? The three in the Three Amigos means there must be three people on your development team in that. Now, compulsorily, it should, depending on the kind of story. So if it's like a backend story, sometimes the PM doesn't need to be there if it's like a really, really big backend heavy story, except the PM is like a technical PM that understands details, right? But ideally, the average user story should have the PM, one development engineer, one QA engineer, right? Three amigos. Amigos as in AMIGOS. What they do in those calls is the PM introduces a story saying, okay, this is what we would like to do. And the three of them in that call talk about that story. So how do we have the documentation for it, which is the PM's responsibility? Then we ask questions like, how do we solve for this? Like, because the PM's job is to explain to those two people on the call, this is what we want to do. The engineer's job is to figure out how to solve it. The QA's job is how to figure out how to test for the solution that is being developed against the problem. So on that call, we would discuss the problem. We'll talk a bit about the solution, but not completely, right? The developer can say something like, oh, I have an idea of what to do in this case. But we usually leave it to something called a refinement call so that the engineer then walks you through the solution of that problem. Okay? So Three Amigos. Now, the next call is refinement, where the engineer now says, okay, based on this Three Amigo call we had, this is what I think the solution would be, right? And when they define that solution to you, the three of you, if you want to add a fourth, it's fine on that call, but the minimum requirement for that call is three. You can be as large as possible. What then happens is you do a vote, right, to determine how difficult or easy that story is. We call it assigning a story point, right? So it can be anywhere from one story point to like, I think typically with sprints, you shouldn't have a story that is too difficult within a sprint, except that's the only thing you want to discuss. So when your story point is getting to a 13, it means that it requires a lot of development work to do. If your story point is 1, 2, 3, 5, it means that it can be solved within a week of a sprint. And a sprint typically is 2 weeks, right? Anything from 8, 13, 21, there's a lot of work. So it means if it's a 13-point or 21-point story, you need to break down that solution into bits. So you don't develop it as just one, because the engineer could end up just spending their entire time doing that, and that's not productive. So you want to break it into chunks so that it's like a 5, 5, 5 or 5 and 3, right? That the person can work on. Okay. So I'm going through these steps intricately so that you understand a lot of places that the QA can come in before testing then starts. right? Because the mistake that a lot of QAs make is when you now come to testing stage, you now be asking for documents. That's not how we work here, please. So at design stage, remember, we've gone to the field, we've gathered some requirements. We are asking customers, this is what you're trying to, this is the problem that you have. Okay, if we do this, does this solve your problem? Okay, if we do this, does this solve your problem? Again, we're not talking full solutions. We're just trying to get a sense of what the customer is thinking in that period. And then if it's a front-end facing solution, like it has a web view or an Android view, the designer or the product design team will then design something. Now, QA, the way you can spot issue there, look at that design. If it's a Figma design, Miro board, whatever it is you use at your company, look at that design, spot loopholes. If they are showing username and password and there's no button to click, or there's a login button, but there's no forgot password button, those are quick loopholes. There are certain things on a login page that are generic. If you don't have forgot password, why are you building a login screen? It's a problem because people will forget their passwords. If you do forgot password, but the customer doesn't get an OTP, it's a problem. Are you guys getting the sense of it? Right? So you can spot loopholes within the design stage very quickly. You can, when you have those 3Amigo calls and you're looking at the designs, you can say, okay, I don't understand what this is showing here. It could even be a color. Maybe they use red for login instead of green, or it's supposed to be transparent, and then when the customer clicks it now shows a color. Everything is visually appealing, right? So again, it's your job to spot some of those things and immediately note it to the PM or to the product designer to tell them to update. Now, the next stage is development. At the design stage, what we are saying is we have sort of created a preliminary design for what we think is going to be a solution for this customer, right? And then we've done a 3Amigos call, we've refined it, and we know that this is going to solve the problem for the customers, right? In between, the PM could do something like a validation where they actually take the designs in a prototype manner. If you guys haven't heard this language, sorry, I'll try to break it down as much as I can. But a prototype means from that design, they build, it's not really a build, but like in Figma, you can have a phone-like type copy of what that prototype is. So the customer can click it and you can just sort of watch them go through the process, right? That's a prototype. So if you validated that the prototype works for the customer, then you can then give the PM gives the developers approval. Okay, let's continue. Let's start to build, right? When they start to build, because you have knowledge of the acceptance criteria for which the engineers are building for, start writing your planning documents there. In fact, when Toby and I worked together, he already knew this. Whenever we're having a refinement call or a 3Amigos call, and the engineers say, okay, we're giving this a 5-story point, we vote together. I'm already asking Toby, what's your design release plan? What's your what's your testing plan for this work, right? Because you are an important part of getting that work to be completed. Now, the third part is now solely on you. Now, engineers usually will say that they will do some level of unit testing. Okay, I see Abiola asks, what is Amigo? I hope you understand. What if you work in an organization where you're only involved in the testing stage? I think I've explained how you can get involved in many other stages, but happy to take questions as we go on. So testing is rigorous, should be thorough. I'm going to share a few slides more as you go forward. Should be rigorous, should be thorough, should take into account every scenario, again, which is why your testing plan must be as detailed as possible, okay? And then release, right? Release is, I have, as the QA engineer, done my thorough checks and I am happy for this to be given to customers. Now, this is another place where, and if you see what I've written here, very important. Sometimes engineers do this thing where they code and then they put a lot of pressure on the QA team to quickly test so that they can release. My brothers and sisters, don't fall into that trap. Tell them from the beginning. Remember that I said you are involved at the design stage. So this is where your voice needs to be amplified. If at the development stage, you're already writing your testing plan, you have a good knowledge of how long it's going to take you to test. So be letting them know from that time. Whenever it is you have your stories ready, you have your development completed, I still need 10 days to do my full testing. I still need 5 days. As a team, you can now work within a compromise, maybe because management says, we need to get this thing out as quickly as possible. But you should have enough power as a QA engineer to do your best within a stipulated amount of time, stipulated that is not stressing you amongst all the other work you do, right? Before you then move on to release. Because if you release nonsense, you will be blamed. So would you rather take your time to do the testing or just release because everybody's telling you to release? I don't even like working with people like that. That's my 25 minutes mark. I think I have about five more, right? So it is important that you get to doing those things. Let me set another 5 minutes and then I'll go ahead. All right. So let's move on. Now, this is what you do to build a quality assurance mindset in Agile, right? So prevention is better than detection. There's no glory for releasing something in production. You not say, oh my God, there's a bug. It's not cute, to be honest. If you had spotted it before it went into production, there will be a lot of, okay, I have extra minutes. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll come back to your questions. I just want to make sure that I go through this really quickly. Let me set 10 minutes instead. Okay. So it's important that you spot the loopholes, which is essentially what you build into your testing plans to prevent issues from starting up instead of just letting them go through like that. Okay? Very important. Then continuous feedback loop, right? Which is essentially as you are testing, there's one of, apart from Toby, there's an excellent QA engineer. She's still my friend till date, who I just learned how to do things more efficiently through her, even though she was a QA engineer. If you start to do tests on something, right, and you are spotting that there's a mistake, don't wait till you finish before you start to prop it up. Because, in fact, if you start to spot multiple things within a certain amount of time, raise it quickly, right? Sometimes I understand the value of waiting till the end to be able to share, but it's important that you also share at the time, like in progress, because it keeps everyone on their toes. Let me tell you, give an exact description. If you say you're going to take 10 days from when the development is released, guys, everyone, please give me a moment. For some reason, I'm getting a call. Sorry about this, guys.
Okay, while we're waiting for Adela, how's the session been? I hope you guys are taking notes because it's been amazing. Yes, Adela, we can see your WhatsApp. Please, can you minimize the screen? Thank you very much.
All right, all
Okay,
right,
she's
all
back.
right. I am back. Sorry about that. Many calls today. Um, let's go back. Share. All right. So let's continue. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. So I think I was trying to explain continuous feedback loop. So if the developer develops and then you say you have 10 days, there's that 10 days to the developer is like 10 days of silence to a certain degree. So they're not going to wait for you to finish. They're going to move on to some other work. Now, if you now come back at the end of the 10th day to say there's an issue, it sort of destabilizes them a bit. Why? Now, engineers don't like context switching. Let me explain what that means. if they finished a piece of work in their minds, they finished the piece of work. So within that 10 days, they've started working on something else. So when you say there's a problem, which they should be happy to fix, they are unhappy because you are dragging them back, which is a good thing, by the way. But the way you maintain that is and this is depending on how fast you're able to test and how you get feedback. Within the 10 days, you start to share feedback on what is going on. So if you have a test planning sheet and you say this is failed, and you put screenshots, they can see it within the 10 days and they already start to fix. So they don't have to wait for the end of 10 days. Hope that makes sense. So next one is built-in quality. So as part of your test plans, as part of the acceptance criteria, you're putting in that mindset of nothing short of this is what is required, right? In fact, if I see something in development that is worse, I can easily just report to the engineering lead and say, this person is writing code like they're not thinking globally. This is not a quality-led global mindset, right? That you have power to do that. Another process that you shouldn't skip is the definition of done. This is also part of Agile, right? And definition of done means that you essentially there's a list of checklists. There's a checklist for that tasks to pass into production, right? Each company, each tech team should have theirs. So in MCOPA, some of it is like we have a user story, we have an acceptance criteria, we have a solution, we have user story points assigned, we have a test plan depending on the story. If it's a design story, if it's a front-end story, we have a design. If it's a front-end story or back-end story, we have a demo that should be done. So demo meaning within our small group of people that did 3 amigos or refinement, we should see that the thing you fixed is fixed together before we release it to production. So at MCOPA, we don't just release. We demo internally before we release. Okay? Those are things that you should ideally set as your definition of done. Then avoid tech debt. Now, tech debt may even have existed before you joined the company. But to a certain extent, where you consider built-in quality is where you're now saying, as we continue to progress, as we are building, we factor in I'm noticing that this thing, if it keeps occurring, it will affect customers. Let's fix it. That's you advocating for the customer in the development process. And then follow due processes, right? So don't skip anything because of timeline or one thing. In the plan, and this is what I'm saying, I'm emphasizing this because QA really, you have power. You need to insert yourself in the plan in such a way that they see that you are following due process, that everything must follow due process. Sorry, guys. Again, please hold on.
Okay, guys. While we're waiting for the alarm, please note down your questions, and there will be a Q&A session. Will be a quiz also, as usual. Noting down points that you're learning from it. Thank you very much, and I hope you guys are enjoying this. Join us from you watched from the start, so I perfectly understand it. But next time, please try to join on time. Thank you very much.
Okay, I am back now. Apologies for that, guys. It's a dispatch rider, and I'm the only one at home, so I needed to respond to it. So that'll be the last time I've asked him to give. Okay, so yeah, follow due process. Okay. Now, the next stage is what quality is not. I've broken this into like three different stages, which is technical, behavioral, and process. And each of it is where, each of us should be nudged in the process, right? So technical, when you avoid giving any inputs in the refinement stages. Now, I've seen situations where you have a QA that is just quiet in the Three Amigos call, just quiet in refinement. Yeah, everybody, let's vote. They are not there. It doesn't help you. Let me tell you why. If you stay quiet during the refinement stage and we all vote that the story point is 5, what you've avoided is asking the questions that are necessary to trigger thoughts that maybe the engineer or the PM hasn't thought about. If you now bring it on 2 days after, it's going to affect your level of seriousness, right? It's going to be seen as if, why didn't this person think about this whilst we were on the call, right? And then if it becomes a repeated activity, it doesn't help the team at all, right? So you need to be a contributing factor to those discussions. And the way you can see that is when you too, you become the customer that you're trying to test for. So you have a very vast knowledge of what this acceptance criteria is, of what the product brief is. In fact, you have the ability to put comments because nobody will stop you. Put comments, comment on it. I don't understand what this means. Can you elaborate? As the PM, I don't have any other job but to elaborate to you that this is what I'm trying to solve for, right? So that it makes your testing life easier. Another issue is lack of test coverage. When you don't speak about avoidable technical debt, when you have frequent bugs in production, it doesn't speak well of the QA or of the quality mindset that you're trying to build. Behavioral, no flexibility. What happens with Agile is that sometimes we have issues where towards the end of development, it's possible that we spot something and we say we need to quickly fix or we need to quickly add, maybe as a result of management driven development to a certain extent. It could happen at certain companies. If it's a startup, it's happening every day. So you can imagine that, the startup says, we've almost finished testing. They now say, oh, there's one more thing we've just quickly added. We are quickly test it. That's fine in the sense that that's the sort of environment of the company that you're built in. But the way that you show your professional abilities is to become flexible with it. Now, I'm not saying take on a lot of work that it then begins to affect your ability to do work efficiently, but be flexible enough to say, okay, I think I'll be able to test this within this time frame. Give feedback. Don't just say, oh no, we're not doing. It's not helping anybody. We're all committed to solving a problem for the customer. So if you're tired of testing, trust me, the product manager is tired of writing documents, the engineer too is tired of writing code to fix that problem. We're all tired, if you think about it. But if people within the previous chain of the development process are able to be flexible, trust me, you don't want to be the one that's sort of not letting it flow through. Okay. Avoid last minute test cases or nudges. Now, I believe the QA team has this nudge or this sense. Now, and this is because you are the most familiar with the app or with the thing that is being released. The product manager thinks they are to a certain extent, but the person who actually spends a lot of time, almost all the time, going through this app is the QA. Sometimes you will have nudges. Let me just test this thing. It's not part of my test case, but if the development is saying that it will result into this, is it possible that it could possibly touch this? Those edge cases that you don't factor it in. Very important. Because that's when all these unique bugs used to come out. The customer tried to, and customers, they would always use products in the way that you did not build them for them to use it. That's the unique thing about customers. You build it a certain way, a customer will use it in the way that is comfortable for them. So they might end up spotting a loophole that you didn't expect because you didn't thoroughly check. I've seen this happen time and time again. In fact, we will be shocked that how did they even get to this place? Trust me, customers just do. Customers just do what they do. Is they adapt. You can't build for a 64-year-old the same way you build for a 20-year-old. A Gen Z will approach it a different way than my mother would, right? Even if it's the same banking app. All right. Little to no collaboration, that's behavioral. So when you're not collaborating with engineers enough or with the PM enough, and you're just sort of in a shadow of yourself or just protecting that QA unit, it doesn't help. Collaboration is the essence of development, right? That we worked together to be able to achieve this thing. Shared responsibility and values. So that's, ensuring that each person within the team knows what they're supposed to do, and does it within time, right? So I typically have like a product plan towards release. Product brief should be ready by this date. Development should be ready by this date. Release should be ready by this date. Um, Inform stakeholders by this date. Whatever. That's me. That's how I work. So once I have that plan, it shows and if you ask Toby, I would tag you. You are the owner of this responsibility. So by the time we are reaching your side and you have not completed it, it will be obvious that something is missing here. So you need to have that shared responsibility value to be able to take on what you're supposed to do in time. And then the last but not the least is process, right? So definition of done, like I explained before, badly planned product releases, you're just releasing based on releasing sake, it will come back to hurt you. The time that you could have spent rigorously testing is what you now spend fixing bug, and the pressure from a bug is way worse than release. And I'm sure you would agree with me, right? And then another thing I want to touch on that a lot of people don't talk about often is retrospectives. What does a retrospective let you do? We have done Three Amigos. We've refined, we've developed this task, we've released it. Three Amigos is I need to reflect on the entire process we went through in this sprint to make sure that if there was something we didn't do right, it does not repeat itself. And if there's something we did right, we continue to do it. A retrospective allows you to say, during this week, I should have done this well. I should have started writing my test cases early when the acceptance criteria was shared, but I waited till the end, right? When you are thinking like that, you are more collaborative. It allows you to be able to plan for the future even better. Things are ready before they even say that they're ready. And that's what then drives you towards like being celebrated, earning a promotion because you are thinking of the future, right? You're retrospectively saying, in order to avoid this happening in the next sprint or in following sprint, or if I become a manager, I don't want people under me to be able to experience this sort of thing as well. That's what a retrospective does. Okay. How are we feeling? How are we feeling? How's it going? How's it going?
Thank you so much, Adiola. That was such an
Fantastic.
amazing session. We learned
Awesome.
a
Awesome.
lot.
Awesome.
It's been
I'm
interesting. So
gonna
there are a few
stop sharing my screen and just
questions.
leaning into the questions. Yeah.